Okay, so here we go with Chapter 8, Part 2.
The Bunyip's body floats in space, accompanied by the now destroyed Cybermite. We scroll up to see that although the Bunyip lost its life, it managed to wipe out Snakestaff Magic's Dalek fleet. A lightning bolt flashes and we cut to a tall mountain in the night. Small rumbles of thunder can be heard and we see the occasional flash of lightning within the clouds above.
So yeah, this was your audio telling of Chapter 8, Part 2?
Yeah. So originally after you saw it scroll up to the fleet being destroyed, a flash of lightning would have occurred and it would have cut to the mountain image that I've posted in the art gallery before.
Yeah.
And then it would have just continued from there.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, for those of you who are curious as to whether the actual video or whatever for this is going to be made, we don't know. But as long as the audio's here, who knows, maybe someday Dudley will get back to, or maybe I could make it up, I don't know. Someday I could show you my interpretation of Chapter 8, Part 2 officially, or you never know.
Yeah. Because it was taking a long time for me to make due to a lot of stuff going on, I decided to give it the audio treatment, which I plan to do for the others for now. But there could be one day a time where I make it, but it also leaves it up to your imagination how it could have looked too.
Yeah.
We cut to a stony path with a large boulder in the background. A dark cloud shoots down behind the boulder with the sound of a chilling screech. A hooded figure emerges from behind the boulder and begins walking up the path. The figure continues to walk and we see that it is slowly beginning to rain. The figure soon reaches a cave entrance and disappears into it. As the figure walks down the cave, we see at the entrance that the rain has gotten much heavier now. The figure soon reaches a small opening of the cave that is warmly lit up by a fire at the centre. The fire has a small cauldron set above it.
So this was interesting to me because I'd shown little screenshots like teasing the hooded figure before.
Yeah.
And when it comes to the reveal, you seem somewhat surprised. Like, what were you thinking this character was going to be? Like,
for the longest time, I thought it was you.
That's what I figured you might think.
Yeah.
So that's interesting.
Like, I couldn't just guess randomly at random characters it could have been because your armies had specifically Daleks, Sarah Powder, Venus, and maybe Davros on the side, along with you. So, yeah, it was interesting.
Yeah, there weren't many guesses you could have made, obviously.
Yeah. Just made more sense to me.
The figure passes a perch. Venus the Mercrow is sleeping cosily on the perch. The figure removes the cloak now that he is hidden in the cave. It is Sour Powder. Sour Powder approaches a book that is on a stand near the fire. He looks at the book and a paper checklist that he left on the page. The checklist is mostly complete except for one item that has not been checked off. The soul cake. Sour ticks the box and puts his arm behind his back, revealing a soul cake with pink icing and multicoloured sprinkles.
So yeah, for those of you who are true fans and have listened to our podcasts, that, of course, was back when we did our very first Halloween special, and at one point we ended up talking about the original Halloween celebration of going door to door for quote-unquote soul cakes.
Yeah, it was something Rowan, you and me had discussed early on, and at the time I was like, that could be a funny ingredient to add to a revival thing in the future.
Well, looking back on the podcast, it makes sense because I imagine in the grand, even though Rowan has not technically been introduced as a self-insert character of sorts, even though she's voiced quite a few characters, I like to imagine that in the grand scheme of things, she was like this sort of cat-like witch sort of character, and I imagine Sarah Powder had to like battle her or confront her to get his claws on the soul cake itself, because Rowan made the joke during the podcast that this is your first Horcrux, so therefore... So that made sense to me, because it's like, oh, okay, because that contains a piece of your soul. That's what you need to come back to life.
It comes back to the Horcrux thing again, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's like well, yeah, it's interesting, because without going into spoilers, when you look at what Snakestaff could have left, if Sour Powder and Venus have died, and you haven't been introduced to anyone else as of yet, he could just be left with Vicky at this point, who is voiced by Rowan.
Yeah.
So it's a big part for Rowan to play in that video, which was very nice of her to do. And thank you again, Rowan.
Yeah.
Sour Powder approaches the cauldron, which contains a green liquid that is bubbling slightly from the heat of the fire. Sour Powder smiles as he drops the soul cake inside the cauldron and begins stirring the liquid with a large wooden spoon. It is finally time. Sour Powder reveals the ring that Snakestaff had been wearing when he was defeated by Fresh Powder. Sour Powder holds the ring high above the cauldron between the tips of two of his claws, looking menacing.
As you explained, that of course was the ring that you were wearing, which we zoomed in on by the end of chapter 6.
Yes. So the ring is a replica of the Master's ring from the end of time, which is, it's basically a Time Lord ring. So this is meant to be more of a resurrection, not like how Voldemort comes back in Goblet of Fire, but more like John Sims' Master comes back in End of Time.
Ooh.
Because I don't think Snakestaff is the sort of person who'd split his soul because of I feel like that would be too, risky in his eyes.
Yeah.
You know? But yeah, the annoying thing about Chapter 6 is when you zoom in on the ring, the quality's so blurred, you couldn't tell that it was a Master's ring, which was annoying, so I always hate that. They did that. Which is funny, though.
Well, at least you've clarified anyway. So, yeah.
He is thrilled that this is finally happening. Sour Powder opens his two claws and the ring drops into the cauldron, slow motion style. The ring lands in the green liquid and disappears below the surface. The bubbles immediately become more erratic. Sour Powder backs away from the cauldron, still smiling. Venus, who is next to him, wakes up and immediately joins Sour Powder in staring at the cauldron. An explosion of green smoke heads up outwards from the cauldron, and the smoky shapes of two snakes slither out of the sides into the air and disappear. A shadow rises from the centre of the cauldron, with bright red eyes and a grin on its face.
You know, when you were describing this scene, I was just thinking of, the Death Eater symbol with the skull and the snake.
That's awesome. There's also, there's a scene in, for anybody who's seen Quest for Camelot, which is one of my childhood films, there's a scene where the villain has not the best villain song in the world, but you do see some smoky snake shapes kind of zoom around, and I always remembered that as well, which is quite cool.
Nice.
Yes! I'm finally back! Sour Powder and Venus keep the same expressions. Then the shadow spots them. And you two! As the shadow says this, the hands lunge for Sour Powder and Venus.
I liked your reaction here because it looks like it almost made you feel like they were about to lose their lives there.
Yeah, I like the little twist there, almost as if you were grabbing him saying, "You idiots, come here. It took you this long." But no, he's just happy to be back with them.
Exactly. It was purposely done to make you think, oh, is he angry with them? Is he doing that? Because even they get nervous.
Yeah.
And it's like, guys! Because he loves them, really.
Yeah.
Who look nervous as they are grabbed and pulled towards the cauldron. Then we see Snakestaff stood there in his original form, with an arm around each of them, looking thrilled. He hugs them tightly this way. You two are the best friends a YouTuber could ever have! They smile while they are being hugged. Snakestaff lets go of them and looks at Sour Powder. When I sent you to go with Daniel to Harry Potter World disguised as me, I knew you wouldn't fail me when finding out about the dark magic on display. We see a photo of me and Daniel at Harry Potter World, but zooming in on Snakestaff's face in the photo, we can see that it has Sour Powder's eyes.
So yeah, apparently that wasn't you I met up with at Harry Potter World. It was Sour Powder in disguise.
Your reaction to that was amazing.
And again, it makes sense why Sour Powder would have gone there because he wants to learn about, the dark magics and on display and how to bring someone back to life from this situation and such. So that was a really surprising reveal there.
Yeah. I mean, it is a complete jokey fourth wall joke at the same time because it doesn't actually make sense why you'd meet up with me after I was dead and all that stuff.
Like,
it's just one of those fun things.
I just thought I was meeting you out of character, the real version of you, but no, it was Sour Powder.
But one thing this also does is it confirms Sour Powder can shapeshift. Like Fresh Powder, so it is also a little bit of lore addition there that he's able to, even if he was pretending to be me, he could speak like me. So It shows that too.
Sour Powder passes the Snakestaff to him. Snakestaff lets out a sigh. Now I can finally begin my new plans. Before Snakestaff can do anything else, however, Sour Powder passes him a small communication device, looking worried. Snakestaff looks at it and sees that it has 2 messages, which have clearly been read by Sour Powder already. 2 messages? He exclaims. He clicks on the first one. The robotic voice of Reaper 35 is heard. Snakestaff magic. This is Reaper 35. You left me with an emergency contact for you in case you actually lost against Fresh Powder. If you're really out there and are returning somehow, or if Sour Powder is listening, then I have something important to tell you. It is all over the news of the world. Your fleet has been entirely wiped out by a creature Fresh Powder sent called the Bunyip.
So yeah, basically summing up what we know in Chapter 8, Part 1.
Yeah, and it's also Snakestaff's technical first introduction to the Reaper, besides the April Fool's joke situation.
Oh yeah.
So he knows he's got allies out there.
Right.
Doing stuff.